when you hear about manifesting and the law of attraction and all of these things that it's called, you always hear the word co-creation. Co-creation means there's a right? It's not just you. Why are we trying so hard to do it by ourselves? Hello, hi Vibin It homies. Watch out, because I'm jacked up. Your girl just made a chai tea latte. That's what happens when you're sensitive to caffeine. But this is your homegirl, Kelsey Aida. We've got Lindsay Robinson here. We have a very special guest we're about to introduce you to. But first, if you're new to the show, welcome. We are here to help you create your heaven on earth, live your best life, manifest all your dreams, love yourself to the fullest. And we're just really here for a good time, the high vibes, spiritual stuff, self-help stuff, the chai. And then my mother-in-law was just visiting, and she bought like this fancy like pumpkin spice whipped cream, which I don't usually keep whipped cream in my house, but I was like, whipped cream for my chai? Yes. So it's a very fancy one, in case you guys are wondering.
I did see the little, I thought it was just extra foam, but you did the whipped cream.
Girl, I'll be doing it right out here. I'll be doing it right. And our new friend today has the same agenda for helping her readers and her clients to live their best life and manifest their best life too. Her name is Tammy Mastroberte, and she is a best-selling author and spiritual teacher, and her new book, The Higher Help Method, is awesome. I highly recommend to everybody who is into manifestation, wants to connect with their spirit team, wants to get more help and support in their life. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're kind of just going to let it flow, see where it goes. But Tammy, thanks for coming in. Thank you so much for having me.
Tammy Mastroberte. So, Tammy Mastroberte. I'm trying to call in her European side.
Yes, because I like that.
I guessed how to say her last name before we started recording, and it was I said Mastroberte because that's how it's spelled, and she said Mastroberte, which is the American version. But I really think you got something there with Mastroberte. If I had that name, I'd be saying it to everyone. Just saying.
Yes.
Mastroberte. No. It's Mastroberte, actually.
Yes. Yes. I like that. No, I'm feeling that vibe.
Listen, we are very excited to have you. I love your book. I love all the topics, and everything you talk about is what we talk about. So it seemed just perfect to have you on. Can you give us a little bit about what got you started on the manifesting path, your higher help method? I want to get into all that, but like, where did you start on this path? Were you a weird person? Because we all seem to be weird, right? We're not normal.
Yes. I think I always kind of had that feeling of thinking differently, even when I was younger. I mean, I always had friends and stuff like that, but I was always more of like a deeper thinker. You know, I always asked questions that my mother would, be horrified because she didn't have an answer to, things like that. So, but I think what really started me on the path that I'm on today was actually my mother's death when I was 22 years old. She died of a brain aneurysm 3 days after Christmas. And I grew up Catholic and even went to Catholic school through 8th grade, but it was her death that really kind of opened me up to understanding more, to understanding what happens after we die. What am I even doing here? How does this world work? And I always say my mother taught me the truth about life after her death, because after she died, like everything opened up. And it was really a visit to a medium. And this is over 20 years ago when, I always say mediums weren't on TV and there wasn't this whole big, people weren't talking about that. And so my sister and I went to a medium that we found that we thought was the only person in the world who could do it at the time. And we had an hour session, and being the skeptical Virgo that I am, I lied on all of the forms. Like, it was before you could do things online, so everything had to be done through mail. So I lied on all the forms. And that 1 hour session really opened me up to a whole new world. And it was like, wait a second, this was my mother. How does this guy know this stuff? He said things that I hadn't even spoken, but just thought in my head. And so that kind of set me on the path that eventually led me to saying, because I was a magazine editor working in New York City, and I was like, I want to be talking about this spiritual stuff. Like, this is what I want. And so I just got so invested in, it was Wayne Dyer, and then it was Deepak Chopra, and then it was all these authors, and it was just, I couldn't consume enough content and books and information. And eventually I wound up starting my own magazine called Elevated Existence, which I don't have anymore, but this is going back to 2008. And that led me to wanting to work for myself. And the manifesting piece came into it. I think I was always dabbling in different things, but I feel like what really set me off on my path and what started me to create the Higher Help method, although I had no idea at the time I was creating it, was being stuck in my business, wanting to get out of my full-time job and do my work, my spiritual stuff full time. And I was stuck, and I kind of went back to my Catholic roots and was like, well, whenever I was stuck in life, my mother would bring me a prayer card for a certain saint, or she would bring me something and say, you know, this is who you have to ask for help. So I remember I was meditating, and it was the end of my meditation, and I was like, I'm just going to say a prayer to ask for help, because my business isn't doing what I want it to do. I'm not making the money that I want to make. I had already left my job at this point. And so I just said a prayer, calling in help and asking for guidance and asking the universe to send me the signs, the synchronicities, the opportunities, whatever I need to move in the right direction. And I just started saying that prayer every day, that I just kind of created off the cuff. I typed it out and I started just saying it every day after my meditation. And within 2 weeks, I started finding these little breadcrumbs that were leading me to eventually create an online event that I still do annually today, that brought in more money into my business in 3 months than I had since starting it like the 5 years prior.
Yeah.
And I started realizing like, oh, like I don't have to do it by myself. I don't have to figure everything out, because I have this team that can assist me if I just ask. And so that was kind of the start of the method. And again, I had no idea I was creating it at the time, but now it's become this 4-step process that I rely on, not just for manifesting, but to just find solutions for anything that I'm looking to figure out.
Yeah.
Long story, but that was
No, I love it. I love a long story. And it reminds me of Gabby Bernstein. When I first started my own business after I graduated for hypnotherapy, I did not know anything. And so I was looking at everybody who was doing the manifesting thing, and that's how me and Kelsey met. And it's been a fairy tale. But Gabby Bernstein says this prayer, which is, where do I need to go? What do I need to do? What do I need to say, and to whom? I'm probably missing a couple there, but basically like, just give me the breadcrumbs. And I think we get this idea in our head that we have to know. And it's a knee-jerk reaction. When you really stop and think about it, you remember that you don't have to know. But our day-to-day is objective based. And so we're always very action-oriented of like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Well, you ask. I think books like yours are very needed just for that reminder that you don't have to figure it out by yourself, and you don't have to have all the answers and the future planned out for the next 5 years. You just have to ask for the breadcrumbs. Awesome.
Right. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have a jumping off point, or that you're not going to figure it out. But like when you hear about manifesting and the law of attraction and all of these things that it's called, you always hear the word co-creation.
Yes.
Well, co-creation means there's a right? It's not just you. You're doing it with the help of the universe, with whatever you call that.
I am the sole creator of my that just doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound
correct.
Stupid.
Right. It's co-creation. So why are we trying so hard to do it by ourselves?
Yeah.
That is the question, right? And even in the physical, right? There's billions of people on this planet, and yet somehow we all feel like we have to do everything by ourselves. Like, there's billions of people on the planet for a reason. It's not so we can all live a lonely life on an island unto ourselves.
Yes.
So the spirit team and the human team, here for the support, here for the help, here for the guidance. Do you have any, I mean, I'm sure you have so many, because I saw like a million in the book, but these days recently, who are you working with? Is it like a certain archangel? Is it like a certain ancestor? Like, who are you calling in and working with like this week, these days?
This week. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many things. So first of all, I like to call in what I call specialized higher helpers, right? So it's not just the universe. I call in my individual angels, guides, right? Whether I know who they are or not, I always start a prayer with calling in the collective. But then I like to call in some specialized higher helpers. So just like if your car breaks down, you're not going to call your plumber to fix the car, right? So you want to call somebody who's specialized in car mechanics. So it's kind of the same thing on the other side. So there's a couple of things that I'm working on right now. And I do a weekly spirit boost kind of live that I do on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And I shared this with that group that I'm working on dealing with 2 cats that I have. One that I've had for, I'm going to say she's like around 7. And the other cat that I rescued just out of the blue because I found him in a dumpster at a mall like a year ago. So I have these 2 cats, and he's like crazy, spunky kitten energy. And she's like, I'm tired, leave me alone energy. And so there's like a lot of drama, and he like jumps on her, and like it's a whole thing. So I shared with, the group that like, listen, I'm literally calling in Archangel Ariel, who deals with nature and animals. I'm calling in St. Francis of Assisi because I go back onto my Catholic background. And I always say, you call in who works for you. There's goddesses, ascended masters, so many who do similar things that you can choose who resonates with you. But I call in St. Francis of Assisi because he is the patron saint of animals. And I called in Archangel Shamuel because I know that my cat Callie has anxiety and she's a very scaredy cat. Like if you come to my house, you'll never see her because she hides. And so I kind of group these different higher helpers together, and I'm saying this prayer every day to ask for advice, to ask for guidance, to show me the way. And since I've started saying it, a friend of mine was like, oh, did you get these diffusers to plug in? And I was like, no, I had no idea. I was using a spray. So I started plugging in these diffusers. And there's just been so many different things that have come in, and I've seen slow improvement with them. So that's one thing I'm working on. I'm also always working on business growth. There's a ritual in my book that I do myself. I do it for 40 days, then I let it sit for 40 days, and then I do it again. And so there I'm calling in archangels and I'm calling in goddesses, but I'm also calling in like Albert Einstein or, different entrepreneurs that have passed on, like Elizabeth Arden, right? Because she started her own business. So there's
Steve Jobs. What's he up to?
Yes, no, I call in Steve Jobs too, especially.
Really?
And oh no, 100% he's in my book. No, and I call him in anytime something breaks down with any Apple product that I have. I'm like,
wow.
What do I do? And I'll tell you something. The best story that I have for you is that I had a student of mine take a class, and she was like, Tammy, I never thought on calling on, higher helpers that are on the other side that are not like an angel or whatever. You're telling me I can call on anyone. So she was a photographer, and she, for 2 weeks, was really struggling with getting a camera to work. So she took my class, and she's like, I'm going to call in the founder of Eastman Kodak, and I'm going to ask him to help me fix this camera. She's like, within a couple of hours, I thought of something I hadn't thought of, and it fixed the camera.
Dude, I love that. So yes. I'm not Catholic, never have been Catholic. My mom's dabbled in it, but I don't know where I learned it, somewhere on the internet. Saint Anthony is the saint of lost things, right?
Correct.
Lost
yeah.
Things. And so did you ever hear Tony, look around, something's lost and must be found? Okay. So I just played with it, right? I lost something, I used it and it worked. And I was like, shit. Then I used it more and more. And every single time it works, so much so that my kids use it now. And it's never failed them. My son, when he was a toddler, left his iPhone on a shelf at Target. And my husband was like, it's gone. I'm like, dude, lift your vibe a little bit, okay? It's not. Call the store. He called the store. They don't have it. And he goes, I go, what if you just went there and looked on the shelf that he left it on? And he's like, it's not going to be there. Somebody took it. So like, just go. So he went, and sure enough, it was sitting on the shelf. It was on the shelf still at Target.
Yeah.
What? Anyway,
no,
in the toy aisle. So like, yes. So it really is never, as he was driving to Target, I was like, Tony, look around. Something's lost and must be found. And sure enough, he was shocked that it worked. And I was like, thank Tony. Okay.
Yeah, no, 100%. And for those people who like for whatever reason, and I believe it doesn't matter your background or your belief system, you can call on any higher helper, because once we kind of return back to the other side. There's no separation, right? There is no like, right. But let's say somebody's like, I'm really just can't do the Catholic. I don't want to call the saint. You can call on Archangel Shamuel, who also helps you find lost things. He'll help you find a soulmate. He'll help you find new friendships.
Catholic?
He's I think it's just more, I don't know that it's Catholic. I think some of these archangels kind of go over different Christianity religions type of a deal.
Yeah, right.
But some people have like an aversion to saint and they feel better with archangel. So I always say, like, I give you, like in the book, I give lists so you work with who you resonate. I call them all in to work together because why not? But you do what feels good to you.
And I do have a oracle deck of all the Celtic goddesses and the whatever the gods and goddesses from the Celtic religion. And I think that if that fits better for you rather than like a new, what would be necessarily relatively newer Christianity, then you can do, I agree completely. You can do whatever vibes with you. If this week you want Celtic and next week you want Catholic, you go for it, you know?
Absolutely.
They're just here to help. And that's what I've been seeing and kind of experiencing ever since I started on manifesting and talking about it. And they just want it. They're not going to help unless you ask, but if you ask, they're ready, right?
Oh, 100%. When you start asking, I always say, like, when you stop and say, okay, here is what I'd like to create, this or something better, right? Because I'm always, who's never open to something better? And you have to do that. Otherwise you might miss things coming in because you're too focused on one thing.
Yeah.
So this or something better. You have to cover, you have to say, I'm not thinking of something that's even better. And once you do that and you start asking, all the wheels of the universe start moving. Yes. And the universe almost takes all these puzzle pieces and moves you into the right place at the right time with the right person and does all of this stuff as soon as you start asking and saying, here's what I want or something better. And it's such a mind-blowing process when you start seeing the results from it that, like, you just get hooked.
It's true. What are some other, like, either personal stories or client stories or reader stories? I'm sure you probably have some reader stories since your book has come out and now it's been out for a few months about like when they asked and what transpired.
Oh my gosh, there's so many good ones. So
just pick a favorite.
I'm trying to think, do I want to say myself or do I want to say, well, there's two things with abundance, money and abundance. So one thing was someone did all of the rituals in the book. She was like, Tammy, I figured why do one? I'm just going to do all of them.
That sounds like me.
Right?
Cover it all.
If one works, three is better, right?
Yeah.
So she did all of the rituals in the book. And within a couple of weeks, she got back to me and said to me, like, oh my God, things came, like, literally money opportunities are coming to me out of the blue that I didn't even search for. I can't believe this stuff works. And I was like, I'm so excited that you're seeing, because now once you see it works, now you're like, it takes that stress and pressure off. And now you actually believe that things are more possible, and your belief is a whole huge part of it, right? Yeah. Another one was actually my sister used a prayer that I gave her for abundance and a couple of the rituals in the book. And she was working as a substitute teacher in a high school. And she was like, I need to make more money. So she started doing it all. And within like a couple of weeks, she got offered a job that was more permanent, like a permanent position, so that she was making more money per hour for like a 3-month period that wound up getting extended for the full year. She also went to a football game, and at the football game, she won like a 50-50 raffle for $400 that she never wins stuff, right? So those are just some examples that are not me in terms of like things just happening out of the blue. But like for an example of how the universe leads you to things, I actually share this in the book, but it was such an amazing story that happened to me. Before I even wrote the book, I was trying to figure out with my business, like a branding. And I knew what I taught, but I was like, how do I kind of pull it all together into like, this is what I do, right? And I struggled with it for years, changing things around. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to create a prayer for myself. Because I had these lists that are in the book just for myself. So I used to use for my clients. So I started pulling together a prayer, started saying this prayer. All of a sudden, I realize now looking back, because that's when you can trace these things, is something made me open an email from this woman who does copywriting that I probably have been on her list for over a year, probably more, never opened her emails, right? So something made me open the email. I opened the email and I was like, oh, I don't really need a copywriter, or I don't need to know how to copyright, but she seems interesting. I'm going to follow her on Instagram. Followed her on Instagram. Within a couple of days of following her on Instagram, she posts on her story that she's working with this new woman on branding her business. And I was like, oh, that's what I'm asking for help with. So I wound up booking a call with this woman. Turns out she actually had background. She used to do writing for a spiritual publisher. And we totally jived. And within like 8 weeks, I had I hired her. Everything was done. I was clear on what I was doing. And I came up with the idea for this book that is out now, all from that session. So sometimes it's the universe like making you open an email or making you follow someone on Instagram and you don't even realize it's happening, right? That's just another example.
Wow. Lindsay, I think you're... Oh,
sorry. It was really good too. I said, that's where the process in trust the process comes, because it's not just going to be the end result right now that you're asking for. It's going to be opening an email or taking one step in the direction of your goal.
Yes, it's following those breadcrumbs and you don't even realize it's happening until, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I was looking for. And then you realize, well, what made me get here? Oh my gosh, the universe was helping me.
I have a question that I know me and Kelsey already have the answer, but I really want to hear your take and just how you're going to say it. So how do we know, as the people just starting manifesting, and maybe we don't know a lot yet, how do we know it's a sign and the next step in the direction versus a coincidence? Go ahead.
Right. Okay. So I don't believe in coincidences. That's like, I just don't. I think everything is happening for our highest good, even if it doesn't look like it at the time. So you could get fired from a job and you think this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And then you wind up getting a job. This happened to me. You wind up getting a job for more money that actually led you to meet people that led you to start your own business. Right. So we just think sometimes that things are happening and they're just chaotically happening to us, but there's usually a method and a madness behind it. In terms of understanding a sign versus, am I making this up or is this real? I teach people to ask for signs, like ask for a sign of reassurance that you're on the right path. Ask your loved one on the other side to send you a sign so you know they're around. So when it comes to loved ones, it's usually like something that has to do with them, right? Out of the blue. Or if you gave them a sign and then it comes through. But in terms of just life and in general, if you ask for a sign and you get something that you think is a sign and you're not sure that it's the sign, what I tell people is just ask for another one. Never say no to the universe. Just say, yes. And can you just send me one more so that I'm 100% sure that that's it? But when it comes to like directing you and like, should I go this way or should I go that way? If you're asking for help and something seemingly falls into your lap, you want to act on it at least. Like for that business story, like I said with the branding woman, I'll give you an example. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a sign. I need to work with this woman, right? But then my like little brain was kind of like, well, maybe I should just look into a couple other people because how do I know for sure? So I'm just gonna, reach out to one other person too and just see if I can book a call, right? And so I acted on the sign that I got from the universe, but I did that skeptical, let me reach out to somebody else. And when I reached out to that other person, even though I was recommended by someone else, I didn't even get a response from that person. I got a response from like an assistant that was like, oh, yes, she's available. You have to pay $400 for the phone call. And I was like, but how do I know I jive with this person? I'm not going to pay $400. Whereas this other person that I randomly found, not random, did a free 30-minute call with me to see if we were a fit, right? So what I find is when you act on a sign or act on a hunch that you think maybe I should do this, if that's not the right way, the universe will put up a roadblock. Yep. And then you'll go, oh, okay, then I know I need to go that way, right? So once you start working with it and understanding how the universe communicates with you, knowing that you really can't screw it up because if you move in a wrong direction, the universe will reroute you. You just get more comfortable with understanding it, if that makes sense.
I think that's something we need to double down on. So I love that you brought it up. If you would have gone the other way, paid the $400 and you didn't jive, it would be easy to say, oh, I should have just listened. Now I'm at $400. This is the worst. Rather than like, okay, well, reroute me, please. Like,
yeah.
Just know that you cannot get it wrong. You might have a sidestep or you might have a traffic in your route, but it's not anything that's going to end your journey. It's just a sidestep.
It's almost like I say to people, wrong actions are better than no action. Because if you take no action, you go nowhere, right? But if you take a wrong action, at least now there's movement for the universe to reroute you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a practice of contrast, right, Kels? Like we always have to, it's equally important to let the universe know what we don't want as what we do want. But just don't focus on the don't too much. Try not to. Focus more on what you do want. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question that's coming through from some people listening that kind of is like a piggyback off of what we've just been talking about. So let's talk about roadblocks and blockages. Because my personal, I'm like a teacher of mastering your resistance, right? And I'm always learning to master my resistance and overcome roadblocks and stuff. So it's like the question that I'm hearing is, how do we know, like, yes, we're going to be rerouted. So that's good. We have faith in that. We have trust in that. We don't have to have so much anxiety. But what if you're like trying to create something and it seems like there's just like blockage after blockage after blockage?
Should you want to do it
as a sign of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. I should do something else. Or do you think there is a time and place where the universe or your higher self or your spirit team is testing your dedication and perseverance?
Right. So I usually when it comes to I'm trying to do this and it's not working. Part of it could be your energy, right? And your sometimes when and I see this a lot with clients that come to me is I'll go right to the crown chakra and I'm like, oh my God, you are overthinking and overanalyzing and thinking and thinking and thinking. And all of this thinking is blocking the actual idea or guidance from coming through. You are literally blocking your own solutions. I always tell people solutions they're never found in stress. They're found when you shift. So you have to be managing your own energy throughout the day. And there's little tools that you can use that take only minutes to kind of up your vibe, right? So that you are now more open to these signs coming in. So that's one thing. So check your own energy. Number two, if you're getting roadblocks and roadblocks and roadblocks, I would go back to the beginning and start asking the universe for help with, here's what I want. And I always say sometimes people don't know what they want. So you start with, here's what I don't like about this situation. And then here's what I'd like to see instead, right? So go back to that and say, here's what I want. For some reason, it's just things are not working out for me. Can you please help me figure out what's going on? Kind of go back to square one and say, I'm open. Maybe I'm not meant to do this. If I'm not meant to do this, can you help me see where I'm supposed to go, right? So that's the other piece of it. And then the last piece is, and nobody, likes to talk about it, but well, some people do, I guess, is there a block within you? Is there a belief within you? Is there something within you that is actually blocking you from seeing other possibilities? And we literally, within our brain, there's a system that if we have a belief of something, we actually won't see things that are opposite of that belief, right?
And that's my bread and butter.
Yes. Okay.
What's going on?
Yes. So what is underneath that, right? And so I do that too. I have like individual sessions where I'll find blocks for people, but I also teach people how to find their own. And so if you're coming up, especially if you're finding yourself going in a circle, like you get money and then all of a sudden you lose the money, or, something goes good and then something goes bad. Then it's kind of like, okay, do I have a belief that money isn't safe? Do I have a belief that X, Y, and Z? And you want to kind of start looking at some of those beliefs that could be blocking you. And there are actually simple clearing methods that you can do to shift those beliefs. And then some of that resistance that you are causing, not even knowing because it's in your subconscious mind, opens it up. So those are like three things that I would look at if you keep hitting into walls.
Yeah. Great answer.
I have an example of exactly this recently.
Oh, good.
So a lot of you know that we sold our house in Las Vegas and moved to my hometown in the Midwest. And the difference of the sale of the house and the purchase of the new house left us with a decent net, right? The net proceeds in our account, in our checking account. And so we used that to live the first few months while we got on our feet and established like our new state of living. We got a rebate check from our insurance company, our car insurance company, for $1,500 because we switched policies when we moved to a new state. I was like, oh, awesome. I forgot that they were going to do that. Wonderful. And like within 2 days, it was like, here's an unexpected bill, $1,500. And I was like, fudge, yes. Why? And then I realized that when we got that net amount in our bank account, I was like, oh, we don't need money for a while. This is great. And we don't need money right now was like repeating in my head as like a stress relief for me. But it became like, you're actually preventing it. So you might not want to say that anymore.
Yes. No,
and I know that everybody has examples where like they get unexpected money and then you get a bill for that same amount. And it's like so weird how that happens. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It was just me saying, we don't need it. Oh, we're good. We don't need it. What?
Right.
How would I do that?
Yes. Yeah. And you just have to shift it. And then once you shift it, then you usually don't come across that same block anymore. And you start seeing, oh, that's how, like, even when you have your own business, like you always wind up reaching a ceiling of like, oh, I can't make more than this. Right. And then once you clear that, then it's like, well, then I definitely can't make more than this. And you just constantly have to be checking in with yourself because you could be unknowingly blocking yourself from seeing opportunities that are the opposite.
What's it called, Kels? The happiness limit? What is it called?
I don't know.
Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Where? Oh, the
you
upper
were telling
limit.
me about.
We were talking about the upper limit that Gay Hendricks writes about in his books. And then we talked to him about it when we had him on the podcast too. And it's like basically the theory of the upper limit is like our nervous systems and our bodies and our minds and our beliefs can only handle so much good for so long until we like self-sabotage or we hit our limit and we like can't take in any more goodness or we can't let it be peaceful any longer. And like everyone knows this in relationships, right? Like it'll be so peaceful, be so great. Like, oh my God, we're the perfect couple. It's great. And then bam, you get in a huge argument because you can't tolerate the peace and harmony, right? You have hit your upper limit. So yeah, I think upper limit is what you were trying to remember.
Yes, upper limit. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was a great answer. I love that. And I think everybody listening can examine where they might, which one of those three, or maybe all three they might be experiencing, possibly. I know we all have them once in a while.
Yeah. Yes. And shameless plug, I'm working on a book about this, you guys, so stay tuned. I was actually telling Tammy before we got on the call that I was using her book as a reference in my book proposal because when you write a book proposal for agents and for publishers to read, it has to include books that like people who are going to read your book would also want to read these books that they probably already have on their shelves. So like people who probably already are reading the Higher Help Method might want to read my new book. So I included it in there because her theory is like, well, if manifesting hasn't been working for you, have you tried asking for help? And then my book is like, well, if manifesting hasn't been working for you, have you tried looking at your resistance and untangling that? So there'll be a good companion series, together. Yes. So if you guys want to know about that book, make sure you're following me on Instagram and stuff. But I have another question about your book. Do you have, and it doesn't have to be a favorite, but can you share? Because there's like so many lists and so many practices in there. So can you share just one, whether it's a list or a practice to leave the podcast peeps with before we head over to the Patreon?
Something everyone can do today and feel really good.
Yes. Okay. So the step 3 of the Higher Help Method is shifting your energy, right? We constantly have to be shifting our energy into a better place so that we can notice the signs and the breadcrumbs that are coming so that we can be more in alignment with the things that we're trying to create. So one of the easiest things that I teach people to do to shift their energy quickly is what I call like a 60-second reset or a 60-second retreat. Even if you hate meditating, even if you've never meditated, or if you meditate 40 minutes a day, I still want you to do this throughout the day. And it's the 60-second reset. So I always tell people, like, set an alarm on your phone to randomly go off throughout the day so that you stop the train of chaos that's in your brain and that's happening around you. And you just close your eyes for 60 seconds and you take a deep breath in and out. And then you repeat a mantra that feels good to you. I always like release because I feel like oh my God, I'm releasing all the stress that's in me right now. You can do relax and release. You can do all is well. I am safe. Let go, whatever feels good to you. And you just do that for 60 seconds. And then you take another deep breath in and out and you open your eyes. Everybody has 60 seconds. My husband always complains he can't meditate. And I tell him everybody has 60 seconds. I don't want to hear it. So you can take 60 seconds throughout a few times a day. And within that 60 seconds, you've calmed down the train in your brain. You've calmed everything. You're now, okay, I've shifted myself. I'm in a better place. Now let me go back to what it was I was doing. If you don't want to set an alarm, the way that I tell people to do it is do it before you get out of bed in the morning. Do it in your afternoon lunch break before you eat your lunch. And then do it before you go to bed at night. Just try that. When you start shifting your energy and recalibrating your vibration and bringing your vibration up, you are going to now stop the insanity in the brain and allow these ideas and these and opening up to signs and being able to see these subtle ways that the universe talks to you or drops ideas into your head for the solution where maybe it couldn't get through before.
And a little bit of hypnotherapy about that too. Hypnotherapy-esque-ness is that when you first wake up and right before you go to bed, your subconscious is the most alert and receptive to the information you're giving it, which is why we shouldn't pick up our phones when we wake up and why we shouldn't watch the dang news or a scary movie before bed. So if those are probably, when I tell my clients, those are the most optimal times to visualize, to set intentions, especially in the morning, because you're setting yourself up for a great day. If you can do it 3 times a day, I think I'm going to do it 3. You know me. By now, Tammy, you know I'm going to do it all, right? So I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do it 3 times. You can do it twice a day. Morning and night would be the best times. If you can only do it once, do it in the morning. Set it and forget it. And then, if you find another 60 seconds throughout the day, I think that's such a great idea to just remind yourself to check in with yourself. It's just, you can't go wrong. And your brain is already primed, prepped, and ready to take in whatever you give it and to set you up for success. So it's such a good tip. I love it.
And I liked the idea when you said maybe before lunch, like on your lunch break, of connecting it to food, because most people are going to eat 3 times a day. So this could be like added to, if you're someone who prays on your food or blesses the food, like before that, do your 60-second reset, nourish yourself, and then move on with the day. Could also be another good way where you're not going to forget it and you don't need an alarm because you're probably when you're hungry. So
definitely. And if you're somebody that commutes back and forth to work, I mean, do it when you pull in your driveway before you go into your house. Take the 60 seconds. Like if you pair it with, like if you kind of stack it with another habit that you have, you'll remember to do it.
Love it. Oh, that was so practical and so good. I know your book has lots of practical rituals and practices and things that people can actually do, saints that they can actually call on, and all types of spiritual and higher help. So definitely everyone needs to go grab the book. It's called The Higher Help Method. It's awesome. We will link to it in the show notes. Is there any other little piece of wisdom or advice that you would love to leave the podcast listeners with?
I think the biggest thing I would want people to walk away with is to realize that they are not alone, that they don't have to do anything alone. They don't have to figure anything out alone. They don't have to solve problems alone. They don't have to manifest alone. They don't have to find a parking space alone, right? Everything that you do in your life, you were meant to have this team available to you. So whoever you are, whatever your background, whatever your belief system, just know I don't have to do anything alone, and that I have access to help. Even if you are physically alone, you're never alone. So just kind of taking that with you and knowing, like, whenever I get stuck, I can ask for help and I will get that guidance. And then once you start doing it and seeing the proof, you'll be hooked on it.
Beautiful. I think that's a beautiful message to leave everyone with. Don't forget, you're not alone. You're not meant to do anything alone. You're meant to have a team, and just carry that in your heart and your mind. Don't forget to use your team and ask them for help. So yeah, that's great. Love it. If you guys aren't on the Patreon, come join us. We're going to hang out there for a couple more minutes. We might pull some cards. We might keep chatting about this. I'm not sure. It just unfolds how it unfolds.
I know what I'm talking about.
It's really fun over there. Okay, Lindsay already knows what we're talking about, so that's amazing. We'll see you guys there. Links are in the show notes. Make sure to grab Tammy's book. And Tammy, where else can people find you? How can they work with you? What else you got going on?
Sure. They can go to tammymastroberte.com, which is my website. I have freebies there, including the morning prayer that I started all those years ago with the Higher Help method. They can get that for free. And then they can also just find all information about me, classes that I'm teaching, my membership program. And then I go live every Thursday at noon Eastern on my YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram for what I call my weekly Spirit Boost, where I just kind of share crazy stories from my own life or things that are happening or that come to me that I think people need to know, that kind of have stories and teaching and craziness all melded together. And then they can get me live and actually ask questions.
Cool. That sounds like a really fun way to interact with you. So grab the book, get on her Spirit Boosts. Sounds amazing. Get on her email list. Lindsay, you got anything?
Nothing but love. No, I'm good.
Love that.
There's stuff. Of course, there's always stuff. Guys, go join my membership. It's all my hypnotherapy digital content, and it's amazing. It's got mindset tools and resources, and it's super, super cool. But you already know about it because there's an ad in there. But, one thing I keep forgetting to tell people, thank you, Kelsey, is that the listeners of the podcast get an exclusive 10% off the membership. And I never talk about that. So if you listen to the podcast, the link that's in the show notes to join the membership has a 10% off discount already. And you only know it if you're listening to me talk right now. So I know you're a listener.
Yes, we have lots of goodies for you in the show notes. So always check them. All the links to everyone's websites, Instagrams, everything's always in there for easy access. And yeah, on that note, we love you. We'll see you guys in the next episode. We'll see our Patreon peeps in the Patreon. And don't forget to ask for higher help.